you. I could be a dancer moving to your song. I could be your lover till the night is gone.
The views expressed in the following show are of the host, the guest, and the callers. The content of the following show, its accuracy, authenticity, and the ramifications of the use or application of said content is the responsibility of those speaking and listening, not the broadcast medium.
All right, we are back and we are live. Feet to the fire. I'm your host, James Alphayanchek, the Black Knight Talk Radio. All right, well, I have a few things to talk about today. I don't know what to say. I mean, I know what to say. I'm kind of, I guess I'm just kind of dumbstruck at some of the things that are going on, and that someone has to say it. I don't know what that. It's just weird. It's just kind of weird that I'm going to say some things that are, to me, are so obvious. But maybe that's a function of my age. I've been around a while, and the rules of civilization have changed so dramatically in the last few years that I don't know. But I got some stories to go over, some things to say. And for some reason, I'm getting distorted here. But I don't use this setup, and until like the show to show, and then it ends up turning it on like somebody messes with it. But anyway, here we are. We're live. I'm glad that you took the time to come by. Be sure to share this however you would like, if you would like, because my goal here is to simply share the things. Turn off my notifications here. My goal is to share things, share vision or analysis or history or perspective, and add it to the collective who seems to have fallen into a ditch and is doing dumb things. I don't know. Some of the stuff is, and it's like, when I was younger, my parents looked at some of the rock music and stuff that, and they were critical of it. That people with long hair, they look funny and all this. But and perhaps the drugs and the sexual revolution would be the social mores of the time that were upsetting. And it's actually going back in reality, going back to those times. I kind of agree with them. I guess. This is where the old Abby Hoffman statement, you can't trust anybody over 30. And of course, when Abby Hoffman got over 30, at some point he killed himself. So I don't know if he couldn't. Actually, he was one of the guys, I guess, was sincere in beliefs of getting rid of the system and its corruption. But of course, the corruption wins, as we will see here. What's going on? But my title is kind of. I want to say this now. The media, people who are listening to this show probably all can agree that the mainstream media is, to use the now. Well, I was given this by a friend of mine.
This fake news was indeed fake news. The news is fake.
Anyway, that we all can sit and look at the propaganda that's contained in there. We have access to information that they don't provide their viewers or readers, and that we could sit and go, yeah, this is their goal is to find something bad about President Trump all the time, ignore anything he did as good because we don't want to have him considered good, lie about him, call him racist, call him all these things, which is pure history of not being the case. So we can all sit and agree on that. So for me, coming out and saying that is preaching to the choir. We all know this. We all come up with this thing. What I'm noticing, well, what I've noticed for many years. I mean, I've been doing the show since 2003, and I've been on the internet. I don't know, it's the 90s sometime before the internet. I used to go to American People Link, which was pre-internet. You had to call in through a modem, turn into American Online, and before that, I would go directly modem to modem to discussion boards. What were some of the boards? There was one on an IBM. I had a Commodore. There was one on an IBM that had general boards. I would go through FidoNet, and I would talk on boards about Jehovah's Witnesses. I wanted to learn about what they said their doctrine was. I already knew what the Christians said that their doctrine was. Same thing with the Mormons. I was on a feminist bulletin board. All back in the early 90s, I guess, late 80s. I had a Timex Sinclair with the 300 baud modem that I was on first. That's before the Commodore, before I had it. But my point is, there's always been BS out there. It's always been a situation where, hey, I'm anonymous, I'm behind a fake name, I can say anything I want, and if my character, if I lose it and I become banned and negative, I just come up with another name. And that's before they had the direct IPs, because you would dial in, you get a random IP. So then, now with direct IPs, people can get banned and they have to go get a randomizer. What is that? Virtual private network, which means you can pick what other city you're from and all this stuff. But it still goes on. I mean, it went on through this Surfing the Apocalypse was a board I used to go to on the internet. Rumor Mill News is another one. They may be still going on. Godlike Productions. These all were full. And I talked with one of the people at Rumor Mill News who was what did they call him? He wasn't a journalist, wasn't an editor. Faction. He belonged to, quote, a faction that was on there. And there were a couple factions. And they would come up with stories, fake stories. Either they would take the truth and they would modify it, or just make stuff up. And they would present evidence for it and see how many people who would follow them. And the other side of the faction would come up stuff against it. And they would try to see who would win. And eventually, at some point, that particular topic would burn out. And they would see by the comments of people who signed on to it who would, quote, win. I mean, there wasn't like money involved that I was aware of, but it was just, some kind of weird, I look at it now, some kind of a sicko thing. Let's see how clever I can be to come up with something. I mean, it's one thing to write a fictional book and say this is fiction, and people like the book, fine. But to come out and say this is fact, to me, that's just twisted. I mean, to me, truth and fact is like sacred. And if there is something that people disagree on, and there can't be a factual way to look at it, you say, I just disagree. Okay, fine, you disagree. Anyway, bringing forward to now, and I've talked about this earlier, and if you're a follower of Q, fine. I'm not being personal. I mean, I started out with, we'll go back one, Planet X, right? I went in Planet X when I started doing the show. I came off the Art Bell show. I started the week after he retired, and I started a show in 2003, continuing along that, let's say, format with my own kind of twist on it. Of course, I believe people were trying to find the truth then. I guess that'd be my naivete. I believe people were trying to find the truth. And Art Bell was a show. I later, in hindsight, figured this out. And so you go from there, and then you move forward. I went through the Planet X stuff, and I was open to it, and went through it and found out that it was not true. Now, if people believe in it, to this day they believe in it, just like the flat earth. It's just not true. And if you want to believe in it, fine. I mean, I'm not telling you can't. You could do whatever you want. But you're not going to come to me and say, like, well, you have to agree with me. No, it's not. And the proof is on the person putting out the theory or the explanation. Now, the same goes with Q. This goes back, I have a friend of mine who's a psychic. I've had him on the show here many times. One of the things I like about him is that he's good with personal people more than like world topics. But the guy is pretty transparent, kind of just open about things. But with a lot of psychics, what they tend to do is capitalize on what did come out. So if you have a psychic, I predicted this earthquake, I predicted this stuff, they're only telling you what they hit. Whether it be they actually picked up the energy or it was a coincidence or a blend of both. That's what they only keep track of what the win is. And the same thing goes with Q. Now, why am I bringing this up again? My life is not, I'm not here to go after Q or anybody for that matter. But I'm seeing a very alarming trend on total fiction that's being passed on the internet. This is within my vision. Like people who are on my Facebook feed or Twitter or Gab, I come across this stuff. And the stuff that's being put out as true is shocking to me sometimes. Now, some of it is because I have experience just simply being older, knowing how things were and whatever. Some of it is that I actually check up on things. I just don't look at a title that appeals to me and then share it. Now, I've got caught a few times. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I doubled down on this, is I got caught a few times sending out stuff that appeared to be true, and it turned out it wasn't. There was either an error in the presentation, or it simply wasn't true. It was a fiction. So it's not that I'm sitting here in some kind of a higher, judging stool, okay? But it's getting really bad. And whenever I come across stuff on my feeds, I will comment on the problem with this particular story. And I'm doing it less and less because it's like trying to bail out a sinking boat with a big hole in the side with a bucket, right? It's getting to the point where it's getting to the point where it's like, wow. It's becoming a religion in terms of the fervency of the belief in the lack of reason in it. I mean, for example, we could disagree about certain things of Christianity. I'm a proponent of what Jesus taught. I'm a proponent of his spiritual message, his doctrines, his ways to get saved. I'm not a proponent to any particular church or denomination. I'm not even tied to the narratives in the Bible. To me, the narratives are as important as the substance of what he taught. Well, that gets me thrown out of a lot of churches, and that's fine, because I have to wear my own skin. But I won't throw the whole thing out because somebody comes up with a clever phrase tying in other deities to some of the narrative that Jesus had, because Jesus was, my view, was repackaged a couple of hundred years after his death. He was repackaged in a form that was familiar to other religions and was used to fit in things. The good news is his teachings came with that. The bad news is people focused on the narrative as opposed to his teachings. But I digress. So as I look through some of these stories, I don't know. I'm very unhappy about it, because what I see happening in the internet community, let's just call them. I did a show a couple weeks ago about the various pills. If you haven't seen that, or you might want to, but in the so-called red pill community, the ones that referring to the Matrix, where they took the pill, they saw the truth of what's going on behind it. The red pill now is becoming fictional. I mean, you're going from seeing the truth to now being taken away by people writing stories that are at best incorrect but believed, and at worst are complete fictions that are written purposely to get people off in La La Land. Now, let me give you an example. I'm using Q as an example. Q is being used by the mainstream to to anybody who comes out and says a statement which is applicable to what's going on in the world with Epstein or deep state or all that stuff, right? And those people happen to speak positively about Q in the past. Now the mainstream comes out, oh, he's a Q guy and all this stuff. And that's one of the reasons why it bothers me about Q, is that Q is a great brush to paint illegitimacy over somebody who's bringing up a valid point. And people have to run away from it. It's like somebody who wants to talk about the constitutional rights and deal with actual history of slavery and how the United States ended slavery in the United States. Some might say shifted it to the general populace. That's another discussion. But whereas everyone did slavery. So the United States, following suit with the economic model around the world, kind of spiritually grew up and said, we can't do that anymore. But that's a good thing. But if you want to if you want to turn it into use the Saul Alinsky techniques, and you want to trash it, you have to come out and make the U.S. bad. So what do? You focus on, look, they supported slavery, without mentioning the fact that Libya is now a huge slave trade, thanks to being Muammar being bombed out of existence and murdered by the Hillary/Barack system. So these are some of the things I'm talking about. It's just that you have to be careful. And it's, if you were the one who's going to say, well, actually in the Holocaust, it wasn't 6 million Jews, it was 3.5 million Jews. All right. Well, one hand, you're a Holocaust denier, you're this and that. On the other hand, it's like, well, it's only 3.5 million, that makes it okay. So sometimes inaccuracies are kind of like, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's 3.5 million, 5 million, 6 million, that's bad. So, sometimes when I seek for truth, I can see, well, it might be this number is inflated. It's only this large number. It doesn't matter, okay? It doesn't matter. And, of course, it allows, you have Trump, who being called a Nazi, who was out exterminating Jews, and Trump is one of the darlings, the favorites of Israel, which, of course, some people say he's a Zionist, he's in the pocket of there's, any way you say it, it's negative. But what I'm amazed of is the people who are saying that Trump's a Nazi and somehow ignoring the fact he's friends with Israel. So anyway, and I'm not getting to any of these particular topics in particular. I'm just trying to show what I see happening, and it's very alarming. It's very alarming to me. I mean, I go on and I'll go through my feed. And these are people who have chosen to be friends with me, knowing who I am either personally, which is a very small amount, and the rest of them have to do with the show over the years. And, and I point this stuff out, and I don't point it out being nasty or nothing, like, hey, what are you doing? I mean, I just bring up facts about what we're saying. And for the most part, a lot of people who I say to do that too, they go, I didn't know that. And, they'll either leave the post up for a little while with the correction, or they'll take it down. And that's fine. I mean, I'm offering my eyes, ears, and brain to help the group of us find reality. I mean, that's basically what it is. Reality is our savior in terms of finding the truth in reality. You can't be hurt. I mean, you can be hurt by reality. How do I say this? Right. So the people who are believing in the plan, I want to say to them, look at what is happening. You have Epstein probably murdered, but killed himself or whatever, and they're disbanding a lot of the stuff. Now, you got Barr, who's looking into it, so maybe, right? So what do people say when Epstein is dead? Well, he's actually been ushered out. He's held underground in a special place to be a witness with no evidence at all. No, I take it back. The evidence they're showing is they have a picture of him being wheeled out, and they're looking at his ear to see if it's the same guy. And if Epstein was taken out and has been hidden and is going to testify, great, whatever, right? But Epstein, up until the end, has been completely unrepentant. He just was out. How these are facts that You have his will being changed 2 days before his death, by whatever means, sealing off any access to information who might have been in his clan. How is that repetitive? If he's going to be testifying against these people, well, that's because, see, now, this is where the fiction comes in. Well, that's because, you see, he's hiding them because they're waiting until they get this thing together so they can arrest them all and all that. He did that purposely. See, people just make this stuff up. Now, I can't say, is it not true? I can't say it's not true because I'm actually looking for truth. So if it's absolutely not true and you can prove it, fine. But if it's not, you can't say it isn't true. But they're just saying this stuff. Well, my thing to them is like, well, how do you know that's true? Where have you seen evidence to show that? There isn't any, except for Q or somebody like that. And this is the part that's getting to me. I mean, it's bothering me a lot that I'm watching the red-pilled community turn into like some kind of a weird mirror opposite of the social justice community who was completely fooled about Trump was going to get beaten to death in the election, and he won. And they were just, you said they were going to win. It's 197% chance. Oh, my God, people crying out in the streets. Well, the people in the red pill community aren't going to be crying out in the streets. You know, what I'm looking at is if this turns out to be, you know, all of a sudden the deep state, the bad guys win yet again, as they have been winning throughout all of our Earth history, are they going to go crying in the streets? No, they have like guns, which is why you see the pressure on the deep state to get rid of guns. I mean, you could see, I see this all happening. We're making the people delusional, and then we drop the floor out from under them. They go into an emotionally based, non-logical, reactive state, and then you use that state for a purpose. Now, in the case of the Antifa and social justice warriors and all that, they use them as noise, as distraction, a noise to drown out what was going on. That was their purpose. And create this narrative that Trump is a racist and all this stuff. It's all false, but they got these people screaming in the background. And you got to, whenever somebody comes out and talks, Jordan Peterson, you know, Milos Monopolis, they start talking about things, and they got these people yelling at them, right? That's their purpose. Now, what is the purpose for the red pill community when they're all built up for this plan and the bottom falls out? What's their purpose? And mark this down. I want to be wrong terribly. I want to be wrong about all of this stuff, by the way. I don't like this. I don't sit here going like, I was the right one. As, you know, looks to me, as I play this out like chess, they're being set up for a civil war. So when it goes, I mean, first off, let's go back to the original Q predictions. It was a year ago, last April, that I drew a line in the sand. So a year in April, May, June, July, August. A year and 4 months. I drew a line in the sand, and that was like 2 months ahead of that. And I said, if we don't see arrests by now, you got to think this is crazy, because this has already been going on for a couple years, a year and so. People like the Fulcrum News, I can't think of his name right now. He was a big supporter of this whole Q stuff, and then he finally came out and said, you know, people are playing 5D, 10D chess, and what you're doing is you're inventing dimensions to be able to make your desire happen. So what I'm looking at in the problem with this is that what's going to happen is it gets, Trump's Barr's going to do this, and they're going to do this, and they're going to do this, and we're all sure it's going to happen. And we got, you watch the news, you have Dan Bongino and others on Fox talking about absolute sure there's going to be arrests, there's going to be this and that. And their sources are what? Unnamed sources. Sources familiar with the things. The same words that were used to describe about how Trump was going to be nailed for the Russian collusion / obstruction. And it didn't happen. Those same the descriptors are exactly the same. Only now it's, quote, our turn to hear this stuff. Now, I'm not saying this can't happen. It might happen. You know, it should happen, because unlike the Russian collusion stuff, there is actually hard evidence showing what has happened. with this so-called soft coup. There's hard evidence of it. Unlike the Russian collusion, where there was no evidence of it. None. And they made it go all those years, and now they just turned it off and are on to racism, which is also no evidence whatsoever. And the propaganda arm of the media, the Goebbels, if you will, our modern Goebbels, are the media. So we're going to call Trump a Nazi, and all the traits of the Nazis and the communists, Mao and neo-Bolsheviks, and all fit the left. Anyway, so we're being set up now. Oh, it's going to happen. They're going to come in. They're going to do all this stuff. And it might, and I hope it does. But go back to my original point. Go back to a year and a half ago. Did you think that we would be talking about re-electing Trump in order to get this stuff done? Everybody on the planet who was in this group thought it was going to be, within the first year or something. Got to get things going. Got to do it. But now they can come up with, well, you see, they had the Republicans that were against them in the beginning, and you had this and you had that, and blah, blah, blah. It pushed it up, which might be true. But to me, it sounds like somebody trying to explain why it didn't happen, as opposed to analyzing why it didn't happen. You go to Jehovah's Witnesses back in the day, early 1900s, Jesus was coming. That was the basis for the whole Jehovah's Witnesses at the time. And he didn't. Of course, what they said was, well, he came spiritually, and they moved on. You recall, I can't think of his name now. I'm seeing his face. In 1985, he predicted Jesus was coming, and he had all this mathematical stuff, which, by the way, I listened to him for a half hour, and I discredited what he said. And I'm not a Bible scholar. I just happened to read the Bible, critical thinking. Well, it didn't happen. So he comes back up in 2012. And the guy's still around. I thought for sure he would have been discredited and gone. And yet he leads another movement. Of course, it didn't happen. And then he did the same thing he did in 1985 and says, well, I was 1 year off because there was no year zero. Of course, it didn't happen again. And he ended up having a stroke and dying. So these are we're getting into a religious fervor. We're getting into a belief. Listen to the words. Have faith in the plan. What is the plan? Well, the plan is they're going to arrest him under a War Powers Act. They're going to bring him down to Guantanamo, which has been all freshed up for him, and they're going to be tried by a tribunal and then executed and or imprisoned. And this includes members of the media who will be at least involved in not collusion. I can't think of the name of it now. They did it back in World War II. But they'll be guilty as well and do it. And it's not that I wouldn't want that. Nothing has been done to date. Zero has been done. Nothing has happened. Now, if you want to say they're getting all their bells and dots and whistles in a row, which they would have to do because, of course, the media would be screaming 24/7 about how Trump's turned into literally a dictator. And so they got to have it all together, and they all have to do it. So I understand it would take time. It would take precision. That would be like splitting when you cut a diamond. You got to do just right, or you get dust. This is like splitting an atom. This is like incredible precision and secrecy. Up until now, the leaks were so leaky that you couldn't have pulled it off. So I can sit down and say, give me a reason why it hasn't happened yet. I can come up with reasons why it didn't happen yet. But there's another reason why it didn't happen yet, because it's not going to happen. You got to keep that possibility in your head. So if it doesn't happen, you don't go nuts like everyone else. You don't go to the mattresses and start shooting out your front window. So this is the part that concerns me, is that we need to be aware and ready, consciously, logically, legally, and of course, if it gets extra legally, you got to do what you got to do at that time. But we can't sit back. One of the reasons why I'm not a fan of the rapture is because as I studied the scriptures, the rapture to me sounds like a created doctrine. It doesn't naturally flow out of the scriptures. It's created. It's helped, in other words. It's filled in. It's applied. It's a poison pen gospel of taking this and mixing with that. Now, if the rapture happens, I would be very happy. I am a complete believer in Jesus Christ, who has, in my life, saved me from myself and others. And I owe God working through him, I owe my any salvation to that. No problem at all. Right? But the rapture is not part of that salvation doctrine. So you cannot believe in the rapture and still be, quote, saved. And if it does happen, I will be very happy. I do think that God will intervene before total destruction, as I read the scriptures. If we take Revelation and others, it says that no flesh would be existing if a time didn't intervene. If the days weren't shortened, no flesh would be existence. And I take that to mean that if you let it play out to the end, we would have nobody alive. You'd have utter world destruction. So to me, it seems like God's going to get to a critical point where it's like, if I can quote Popeye, that's all I can stand, and I can't stand no more. Like, okay, here's the line in the sand, and only he knows that line, and we're headed toward that line. It doesn't mean there's a rapture. In fact, historically shows that the people of God were the front line people who were tortured, who were abused or what have you. So the way the history is showing that the people who are going to be standing for Christ are going to be standing for Christ in trouble. Now, go look in Pakistan, India, China. Look at in a lot of the heavy fundamentalist Muslim countries. That's what's happening. They're being killed, tortured, maimed for Jesus. So what makes the United States special? They believe in Christ, and yet they're being tortured. But over in the West, well, we're going to get taken out of this. This is why I can't follow it. I'll be very happy. I'll be very happy if the Q thing comes true. I'll be very happy if Jesus comes in the rapture format. I'm not going to go like, well, I'm really mad that happened. I'll be very happy. Weeping as I cheer for joy. But I just don't see it happening. I got to be honest. And historically has shown that the Christians have been tortured and persecuted for righteousness' sake. Likewise, historically has shown that the oligarchic world leaders have, at best, created a scorched earth behind them when they lose. And if they're involved in blood sacrifice, child sex, child murdering, whatever, if they're involved in that, they're not going to allow that to come out in the open. I mean, Epstein, whether he killed himself or not, to me is irrelevant. Epstein was good as dead when he walked in there. It doesn't matter. It's like watching The Godfather. Well, how are they going to kill that one Jewish mobster? Well, it's pretty tough, but it's not impossible. Now, the guy who shot him ended up getting killed, but the guy did get killed. All right? If they want say you have a car, and you have alarms, and you have everything on, if they want that car, they'll come by and pull it out through the roof of your garage if they want it. It's the amount of resources and dedication that they would put to it. And let me tell you right now, if Epstein has all that on all these powerful people, you bet no stops are going to be pulled. Every favor is going to be pulled. Every action is going to be done. Everything from possibly drugging the guards to make them sleep, a light drug that can be, a la James Bond, to them, to capitalizing on what's known to be a habitual incompetence. Whatever the situation, when you bring that level of evil genius into play, they're going to get it. And right now you have all this evidence being put up. Don't forget, the FBI and all that. Where's Weiner's laptop? Where all the alleged stuff that the New York police were sickened by on there. Well, that's right. 5D chess. All getting ready. And I'm not trying to be a smartass about it, and I really hope it happens. Okay, believe me, I do. But I can't sit here and just listen to this stuff It's like people just say what they're going to say. Oh, yeah, it'll be all right. Jesus will come, take us away. Q, the plan will turn things over here. A friend of mine, I know he's turned into a friend. He was a listener who I started talking to. He said that he's been thinking about the French Revolution. And he's got a point. The French Revolution won. They did topple the system. Cuba, for that matter. But what took place? They ended up killing the guy who was Robespierre, who was part of the revolution. It ended, it's like it was a scorched earth, if you ask me. So I got to hand it to Trump. I don't care what you say about him. I mean, if you hate him, the guy's amazing to be able to handle all this stuff. I mean, right now he's taking on China. And he goes to sleep like nothing. He's got all kinds of loot. He's got his own money. He's got his own family that he cares about, and he does care about the American person. Now, you may disagree with that. And it's fine, But anyway, so all I'm saying is that everything out there is polluted with crap, with BS. It's polluted with it. It's everywhere. The fact that there's people who talk about the flat earth, I can understand people not believing in evolution because there's a lot of problems with it. What is the problem with the globe, with the flat earth? What's the problem? One of the problems with the flat earth, if I can walk into this for a minute, is that they're saying it's an ice wall around Antarctica. So when you go down to Antarctica, you're not coming to a round country. You're coming to an ice wall that extends around the entire globe. All you have to do is just take a boat and travel around Antarctica, and it should be what? What would be the circumference calculated from the diameter of the Earth? It would be thousands and thousands and thousands of miles to go around Antarctica. If it's an ice wall, you have to go around the entire globe. Right there. If anybody's ever circumvented Antarctica, end of story, end of the whole theory. Very easily proven. If you don't want to accept the globe, people up in space and all this stuff, there's a practical way to prove it. 100% absolute proof. Unless you want to bring in, there's actually a time warp and you're going through time warp. We'll see. This is what I mean. The people who want to believe it will come up with something. And the people who want to believe that in the plan will come up with something. Now, the thing that bothers me about this is that both sides, let's say the good and the bad, are teetered on victory. It could go either way. And it's been like that for a couple of years now. That Trump has been winning in terms of the reality. But you have the other ones creating complete unreality. And they can talk people into voting for socialism or talk people in for voting for. And to me, for example, socialism and all that, it doesn't matter about the ism or the ist. It matters about the principle behind it and those involved. You can have a socialist system that works, but you have to have everybody agreeing. I mean, the capitalist system is working, but it's also causing a disparity in things. People justifying because they have a high IQ, they did a lot of work, they come up with these ideas, so I justify to have an exclusive life that's hundreds of thousands of times over the norm, and I earned it, I justified it. I'm not begrudging that, but to me there's a problem with that. It's like when Jesus talked about if you want to lead, you're going to serve. So to me, the people who succeed like that, their goal is to come back and pull up the rest of the people behind, help them with them. And anyway, another topic perhaps. I should go to the chat room here. I don't know what's going on in there. Let's see what's going on here. One of the reasons why I don't go in the chat room, too, is you have people talking. The scriptures are a created document. What does that mean, created document? Would they get together someday in a room with cigars if they had them and they created it. You have fragments that go back to the first century of the various books of the Bible. You have the writing of Paul's, which atheist scholars agree that Paul is the actual author well within the first few decades. Now, it's created, but to simply sit back and go like, well, it's all fake, it's all created, the Nicene Creed, they took away the real books of the Bible and all that, that's all garbage. That's all just like I'm talking about. You can't, go read the works of, oh, God, I can't think of his name. He's a scholar. It'll come to me now because I'm seeing the books he wrote and stuff, and I got this weird thing where I see the face, I can't say the name. He was like a traditional evangelical until he went to and studied Bible textual criticism, and he ended up becoming an agnostic because he scientifically can't prove that anything Jesus said, Jesus actually said through the scientific method. Okay? But what he did prove is Paul did write what Paul wrote, which brings it back to the first century, before the Nicene stuff. And the Gnostic stuff that they so-called threw out, they still have some of the works have survived, even though they got rid of a lot of them. I mean, you can't just write this stuff off. I mean, you can. You can do whatever you want. It's a free. That's where the whole idea of freedom is. But if you're going to walk into my space, that is not going to be accepted. And believe me, I would get thrown out of most churches for what I hold in a doctrine. So I'm not sitting here perpetuating a lot of the stuff. But this is why I can't get involved with this stuff anymore. Is you got people just say stuff. And it's also an echo chamber. Well, they will cite, well, this guy wrote a paper on this, and this guy did this, and all this stuff. But they all come with axes to grind. The biggest axe when it comes to the Bible is, hey, am I responsible to a God and its rules, or am I my own God? That's the bottom line. When you pare this all back, am I do as thou wilt, or do as he wilt? That's the bottom line. And it's been shown when people have been given an option to do whatever. Look at the Nazis, the atrocities they did. They did controlled tests where they gave people justification to harm somebody during these tests. And they actually gave death-level electrical shocks, thinking they were justified in this area here. Someone following the teachings of Jesus would not do that. So this is why I'm having, me personally, I'm going like, well, why am I doing this? Of course, the answer is because there are people who benefit by it, and that's fine. But I hear some of this stuff. It's like, why would someone come? Who's this guy? Why would he come into? Here's this. It's all allegory. Here's a guy, David Mosher, is coming in the chat room just saying this stuff. He's just saying this stuff. Why is he here? And this is one of the reasons why I don't like the chat rooms, because people come into the chat room for a platform. They don't have their own way to do it, so they come into the platform and they can sit and talk. And this is why I don't know. I don't know what to say. This is why I'm getting like conflicted about even doing this stuff, because it's like I'm swimming in a pool of sewage, and I'm looking to not find sewage. I'm not claiming to have all the answers. I'm looking for answers, and I'm getting people throwing sewage in the pool with us. It's like, wait a minute, we're supposed to get rid of sewage. Oh no, this sewage is good. This is okay. And I'm getting discouraged. That's why, I think what I want to do. I got a long post here in the chat in Spreaker, which might be important to read, but I have to. When I get to a stopping point, I'll read it. This is what and this is what, if you want to listen to last week's show, I talk about the principles talking about the ears getting tickled. People are seeking out people to tickle their ears. I want to find someone who's going to justify pedophilia, because that's what I want to do. And I'll find someone to do it. I want to find someone who's going to justify the rapture, and I'll find someone to do it. I'll find someone who's going to justify Q, and they're going to do it, and I'm going to fall in. Oh, that's what I want to hear. This is the problem. And one of the things I have, it's either a blessing or a curse. I got like a BS meter, I call it. Now, it actually finds truth by pointing out non-truth. So it's kind of a reverse way of doing it. And it's not that I don't want the stuff to be true. I'll listen to it and I go, wait, there's a problem there. There's something wrong there. And I research it, and lo and behold, I'm not finding the problem. I want to find, oh no, it is true. Okay, that is cool. And on small occasions, that's happened. So I've learned to trust my gut when it comes to that. And it's not my gut. It's not me going, this is what I feel is happening. It's my gut may get my attention, and then my head, ruled by my heart, it's a team effort, goes looking into research, looks into history, looks into the logic behind it, looks into the evidence, and finds out that there's somebody just saying something is where it comes from. It's what you're seeing a lot on the internet. You're seeing people saying this particular actor or this particular person has come out supporting Trump. And then when you research the data, the guy never said it. I don't know how many times Lenin talked about Trump, not personally, but Trump as a businessman coming in. The guy from Nirvana did it. You have the actor. So I'm seeing these people's faces now, so now I can't say their name. Which stuff like this keeps me pretty humble, by the way. So probably why I could never get a job professionally, and then it's sparing me from the inevitable do it our way, or we will, do whatever to you. The guy was in the Book of Eli. How about if I name the movies of these people or songs? All right, supposedly he's a big fan of Trump. Nobody's never said anything at all about it. So this stuff's come out that people are wanting so bad to have some musician, artist, Hollywood guy, we please say something good about Trump. Why? Who are these people? There's people there are people out there. James Woods, for example. I can't think of this other guy's name now. What a handicap. He was with James Fonda in the movies. I think he was in Deer Hunter. John Voight. John Voight come out and said something. I mean, you do have some people, but there's just need for have Hollywood. An actor's job is to not be real. So I don't know. Yeah. So I was talking to this guy who's I've been mentioned as Robert. I've been talking to him, Joyzy. He talks about the relationship with his gut. A lot of decisions he made in his life with his gut. And I agree with the gut. But this is how I've come up with the model. This is what I adhere to. And I'm open to it, but you have the head, which would be the computer of your brain. You have the heart, which would be the emotional, non-local energy aspect that comes from the spirit. And then you have the gut, which is, to me, it's like spiritual in that if you talk to your body and try to find out what ails me, you can actually, your body has a consciousness, but it is very limited. It can't talk to you. You won't get like a little email from your body saying, hey, I think you got to go check, you might have a cancer here or something. But it talks to you in subtle, non-language ways. And it's good to keep that in there. And there's a spiritual component along with the physical component, but it's non-linear and it's non-talking. It's non-communicative. You'll get like a gut. You get like, I don't know, something wrong with that. I have no logic to explain it. I don't have any feelings around to temper the logic part of it. And you investigate it using those. It's a tool. And Richard Miller has said, when you get to a Y in the road, he's developed a system where you get your gut to pick left or right. Well, when you use your head, and I go, do I go left and right? I got nothing. Your feelings are inadequate to make decision. Your gut steps in, and a left or right decision, now your gut can handle that. That's a decision your gut can handle. And it could pull upon intuition, which comes back from that spiritual aspect that defies language. It's a symbolistic. I mean, when you have dreams, you'll get symbols. I mean, it doesn't talk to you in English. You're going to get these weird symbols that you got to decode because that's how your brain does English. That's it. Every other part of your consciousness just doesn't do language. Language is a head thing. This is why I like music and art and visuals and all that, how it can affect you without logically making sense. And how producers love to come up with the formula. Hey, people like this song. Let me imitate it, and I'll make some money on it. And it works to some degree. But when you create fine art, you create, everything, fine furniture, fine music. When you hit that real good thing, it cuts through there. I don't know how I got on that. I got some new stuff to go through. Maybe I should do that before it gets too late. I'm actually off tomorrow. I'm going to get my final eye checkup for my eye surgery, which seems to work out good, thank God. But let me set this up. There's some things I want to go hunting for, too, because there's some things that other people have posted I'd like to comment on, and I hope I can remember it. Go to the web page. Oh, that's not the right one. There we go. All right, now I use Facebook just out of habit. I don't like Facebook at all. I know all about Facebook. I know about the blah, 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 but I use it as a place. I got a lot of people on there who share things. I'm also use Gab a lot more now. I'm getting more people involved with Gab. And I use it as a depository for information. I have my own website, feettothefireradio.com. I talked about doing that, but then I would have to make all those people want to come over to my website when they're already sitting on Facebook. So one thing I've learned doing this over these 17 years or whatever, 16 years I've done it, is that I can't make people do anything. So let me go some stuff I have written today. I was looking up this adrenochrome stuff. And I know it's been talked about as being they kill children and get the stuff out of the adrenal gland, and it's a drug, and it costs billions of dollars a pound. And I even saw somebody say that there was 15 semis who were full of this stuff were arrested. And of course, I can't find anything about that. And they're like, well, it's because they scrubbed it off the internet, which you could find anything on. You want to have someone killed, you want to buy drugs, you could do anything you want on the internet, but they managed to scrub it completely. But anyway, I looked up this adrenochrome, and you can go online. It's a legitimate chemical. I mean, it's not fictional. It's not hidden like some kind of we don't talk about that. It's out there. The name is out there. And from doing the reading on it, it appears that it's totally synthesizable. You can create adrenochrome by combining, I'm trying to remember, what was the chemical? It's a silver compound. By combining it to the other one. You know what? I should have that up there. But anyway, you can start out with Wikipedia and work your way out to get into chemistry on it. But it's synthesizable. It's also not a controlled substance, as best as I can find. It's not, in other words, it's not illegal. Now, if you were to market it as something, you would have to follow whatever laws it is to market stuff. If I want to sell, I don't know, I almost said cat's claw, but there is an actual herb called that. But let's say horse hoofs hair that can cure something. Well, you can't do that by our laws. You can market it under a supplement if you could, but as far as I can see, it doesn't mean it's safe or effective. It doesn't mean it does anything. There's a bunch of evidence that say that it's a drug and it makes you all crazy. And if you look, what was it, Living and Dying in L.A. or whatever it is, Lost and Found in L.A., whatever that book and movie is, it's in there and they act it all out. It doesn't mean it's real. Could be. Again, here we go. Is it true? I don't know. What I have found is that the stuff is synthesizable, which means that you don't have to kill children to get it. and it doesn't have to cost $1 billion a pound or whatever it is. So so I bring that out to the table when someone says to me this. I go, well, what about that? What is the answer? Now, I don't know. No one has responded. But here's my prediction. Well, that's because it's not as effective as the natural kind, which is from killing children and sucking out an adrenal gland. Oh, okay. And you know this how? How do you know this? Some guy told me. See, this is why I can't handle this stuff. It might be true. I do. To me, I have no problem believing there's ritual killing of children, sexual use of it, perhaps even eating them, sucking out their blood and getting transfusions. That's all been documented, and it's been going on for centuries. Go back to Molech, where they used to put the babies on his, the metal idol, which is on fire, sacrificing them. They used to sacrifice children to the gods for fertility and virgins and all kinds of knucklehead stuff. So, yeah, that's fine. I can see people. It's already been proven about the pedophile stuff is not new. I could see all that happening, but why do we need adrenochrome thrown on there, which is not provable? It's a fictional type of possible thing. Why do we need that? That's what I mean about this. Isn't it bad enough that people are kidnapping children and killing them through sex and other things? Possibly ritualistically killing them. Isn't that good? That's good enough for me. That's like, okay, we got to stop that. Do we have to throw adrenochrome on top of it? Which now makes it to be, oh, that's all baloney. That's that internet crap. You see what I mean? You got to stick close. Because when you start talking about stuff like this, you start weakening your position. Okay, now we got someone who's texted me. I'm going to remember to turn off the sound again. All right, come on. How do I do this here? 1 second. Sorry for this. I have to remember to do this. This is what I'm saying, is we don't need to have all this color and fancy on top of the basics. Do we need to have 6 million Jews? Isn't 3.5 enough? I'm just putting up as an example. I'm not married to either one of them. Isn't killing children for ritualistic sex and isn't that enough? Or no, we got to have adrenochrome on, which is people can focus on and say it's all crap. This is what my point is. You got to keep it close and tight. Now, I'm not saying that people are going to believe you anyway, but at least there's proof. You have pedophiles who are sexually killing the kids, ritualistic Satan killing. That's evidence, fact. Push that. You bring that out. Whenever people are arrested for it, share that stuff. Because that is enough, I think. All right. I wanted to throw this out, too. Some of these things are so obvious to me that it's like almost embarrassing to say it. But again, in this world of doublespeak, the Constitution has legal methods for adding, changing, or even abolishing itself. You can legally get rid of the Constitution or alter it to that point, but you need to have a supermajority, massive majority, which is improbable, if not impossible. It's possible. It's improbable, very improbable. So that's why they use the judicial, getting legislating from the bench and propaganda and all this other stuff to get the job done because they can't do it legally. Communist socialists can legally change the Constitution and try to elect people to change it. They can go out and talk about it. They can promote it. Vote for me. I'm a socialist. No problem with that. It's not illegal. They don't go to prison. Patriots, or people who support the Constitution, can promote the keeping of the Constitution and oppose those who want to change it by promote to try and elect people who support the Constitution. That's totally legal. You can go out and say pro-Constitution. One cannot prevent either from peacefully speaking out on this, nor assault or batter them. You can't do that. What's happening? People are coming out talking about Constitution, talking about nationalism, and they're getting clubbed over the head with some kind of stick. And the police, in many cases, aren't following up on it. That's the part that's wrong. I mentioned this before in Illinois, in Chicago. There was the neo-Nazis back in the 70s. I mean, these are the guys with the shirts, the swastika, the whole 9 yards, right? These guys were protected constitutionally. They went to court. The Supreme Court protected them, saying, We don't like what they're saying. But they have a right to say it. When you have the freedom of speech, the most protection is found by things you don't agree with, even if it's knucklehead stuff. So these guys wanted to march in Skokie, which is prominently Jewish, which I thought was ridiculous, all right? And what they ended up doing was that Chicago made a deal with them that they said, here, come march over here, and you can still get your day in the sun, and you won't be affronting the people who were in the Holocaust, which is what they agreed to. But then eventually the place broke up. The leader was arrested for pedophilia, which he said it was a setup, and maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But they talk about the Proud Boys and whatnot are being Nazis. Even if they were Nazis and walked around with swastikas, it is legal to do that in this country. Right? I don't like it. I wouldn't support it. And the best thing to do when people do this is completely ignore them. If they break the law, if they go and start hitting people with clubs like the Nazis did do in Germany, which Antifa does now, then they get arrested because that's illegal. Nothing wrong with sharing information, as distasteful as it is, or as scientific. Look what's going on the internet I'm talking about with Q and all this stuff. To me, that's ridiculous stuff, right? They can share it. That's the point of the freedom of speech, is being able to say anything you want, whether it's a complete lie or whether it's based in fact. But this is where you need critical skills, which, of course, our school is teaching us not to do. The kids are coming out, and they're coming out listening to what they're told by the school and so forth. And so you can't critically assess it, which opens the door for propaganda and opens the door for Solinsky rules of radicals, etc. So if we just follow the principles, the white boys can have their day, the socialists can have their day, and the voting system decides. And then there's the laws of how to change things or not change things. It's all kind of simple, but it won't work. There's not enough people who would agree to that, honestly. So they have to come up with the lies and whatnot. All right, and I wrote a little article, very little, modest article, about the simple and obvious take on the China problem, which the link is there. You can go read it. I mean, it's a very simple, obvious thing that everyone gets blamed. Whenever we have a problem, everyone is blamed. Everyone gets a piece of the blame pie. Some are bigger, some are lesser. There are victims. For example, if you go for a modeling job and the guy has you go to I was watching a Stefan Molyneux video, and the guy has you go to a hotel, do a modeling job, has you take off your clothes and walk around, and he ends up grabbing your butt. You're going, hey, wait a minute. Not supposed to do that. Well, what are you doing there for? You should be in an office with other people around. If you were going to, why? We shouldn't even do that to begin with. But this is what I mean is even though the guy had no right to do that, there's still a piece of blame there. You're putting yourself in the position to do it. Don't do that. I don't care. I'm not picking on women. I'm talking about anybody. Picking on somebody who some guy's got a scheme to make money for you. It's going to be, it's going to give you 100-fold in 1 week, and you don't check into it and just give him money. It doesn't. It's not a sex or race or age or nothing. It's common sense. There's predators out there, and you have to protect yourself. The government can't protect you. They can do limited protection. Where I live, they're pretty good. We had some guys crawling around the house. I called them in 20 seconds. There were 4 cars. And they were coming up through the neighborhood, through between the houses, looking for them. It was pretty good. I was impressed. And, of course, they did get away. But they didn't do any harm or nothing. But they still can't protect you. You got to protect yourself. This is why I support the Second Amendment so much. Not only because I have no choice but to support it, because it's part of the Constitution. And you would need a supermassive majority to change it. So, but it is very practical. There's a reason why they have it. I agree with it. Anyway, this China thing is, you can read that. All right, I'm going to say this too. By me saying this, I'm now opening myself to be banned. All right, which is ridiculous from social media things. But yeah, I'm not going to not say something because it's true. It's just like sometimes you got to make a stand. You got to make a statement. Now, this statement is so freaking obvious to me that I'm all embarrassed to say it, And I'm amazed that actually in some areas, like Canada, I think you can actually get arrested for this. I know at least you would be fired in some areas. But as seen through the biosphere, there are two biological genders, as denoted by different genitalia. It is this genitalia that determines who gets pregnant and bears children and which bathrooms one can use. Gender identity is a mental or emotional function. While it is not illegal, nor should these people be abused for their compelled or otherwise choices, the biologically aligned genders should not be legally required to compel or compelled to accept these gender identities as natural, quote unquote, and be forced to share bathrooms, locker rooms, showers, or other gender-segregated accommodations which have been segregated and universally accepted for health and safety reasons. I might add, forever. Now, how is that statement bigoted, racist, illegal, hateful? How is that? You got a wee-wee, you go to the man's room. That doesn't mean you get to be beat up when you go in there. Okay? If you identify as a woman, because what is the problem? The problem is that you have knuckleheads, perverts, who will dress up like this in order to get access to women. And there's been arrests already. They've exposed themselves. Am I saying all transgenders are perverts? I'm not making that statement. I'm saying that it's an emotional, mental condition. Like someone thinks they're a dog. Okay, whatever. It's a condition. It's not normal, and it should not be accepted as normal, though, again, in a free society, as long as you don't break the laws, you can dress up like whatever you want. There's a consequence, and people might not want to hang around with you. That's okay. Your freedom of being who you are includes my freedom of not being with you. All right, so it's all solved, right? No problems. And this is why, if given a free playing field, it would not be accepted in a sense of normalcy, because it isn't. But because of the legal stepping in, forcing it to be normal, you could see there's a destructive aspect of it, because it's not. It is telling you that 2 and 2 is 5. and I would, if Lucinda was in the woman's bathroom and I'm standing outside and a guy was coming who was a trans guy, I could look, you have to wait till she's done. Or suck it up, take one for the team, and go into the men's room. Because there are people out there who are perverted who would use this excuse to be able to have access to children and women. That's a fact. It happens all the time. It happens all over the place. I mean, it's not all the time, like every 5 seconds, but I mean, it's all over the place. It's happened. So if that person was a rational transgender person, they would go like, I understand, and I'm not going to do that, but I understand that we keep the wee-wees out of the women's womb. I understand that. And that's what we've been doing for thousands of years. Again, I say this stuff, and I'm just flabbergasted that I actually say this stuff, and it's like controversial. I've also put down links for Cat for One. I've had Walter Beering on my show. It's a great example of how the government actually has all kinds of hidden wealth. It's really fascinating, and you should watch this stuff. He's not the greatest interface. He's not a charismatic guy, but his stuff is fantastic. So I put the links every so often to bring it up. I bump into it. He put a tweet out about a paper he wrote, and I put it out there, and I brought it up. So, I even put the show. Did I put the show? Yeah, I put the link to the show that we did up there. So I'll translate this onto the YouTube channel. If you're on Facebook, you can look me up. This is on my personal. It's james.arthur.jancic is mine. You could probably just, you can look that up and you could find it. I put a lot of stuff under mine, in the show page. I usually keep for show stuff. Maybe I should put this stuff on the show, but I don't know. Yeah, I put this up too. Never mind the Bullocks. This is the 77, the punk scene. There's a book, there's a song they did called Bodies about abortion, and it's pretty tough. Even the punks know that it's not good. The Trump Greenland thing, I'm not going to really go into it, but there's more meets the eye in this. Of course, Trump can say 2 + 2 is 4, and then people would be outraged. They would say mathematics is sexist, it's racist. But he's got plans there that are interesting of a use for it. So it's definitely not him having a mental breakdown. This is very good. I'm not going to go into this, but I'm going to include it in the link. Mass shooter media myth. This guy goes in and there's one particular gun control study that's constantly referred to, and he went in and with a team of people and searched the information, and the guy who did the study won't give his sources, won't do this stuff. So they went and did their own as best they could, recreating it, and found that he was off so tremendously. They could not have got his conclusions based on what they have found, and in which they went in many countries, many languages, doing searches in all different languages, having a team. And the United States is not the highest mass shooting place, like he said. Like a lot of these things, a lot of this stuff is all crap. It's all politically based crap. I'm going to create a reality that gets the job that I want done, and that's okay, because Saul Alinsky says so. You say anything you want, you create any reality you want. It's completely fictional and harmful. It's okay because we want this to happen, and this will help us, and that's okay. And you can just say, well, they're Nazis and they're racist, so that's okay. Here's a link that's been going around. Bill outlaws the use of fetuses in food industry, and I've seen where people saying this. So I looked up the bill, and actually, the bill is several years old, 2012, and it didn't pass. That I could find anyway. I went on the websites that has the bill, and it says it was reintroduced again 2 years later, but it didn't say anything about passing. So the bill didn't pass. But think about this. And again, I think how I formulate why is this happening is because there's a satanic, whether these people believe was this real Satan or not, it's irrelevant. The people believe this, right? So there is a satanic group. The goal is the opposite of God, which would take care of to quote James in the Bible, the true religion is to visit the widows and orphans in their distress. So you take care of the weak, right? The opposite of that would be to harm the weak. And so having people eat children would be the opposite of nurturing children. I mean, I can't think of anything more. I mean, torturing them, sexually torturing them, and eating them. I think that's the worst it could be, right? So you can't just go to people and say, hey, would you like to have a slice of this kid? You know, you have to be pretty down into complete degradation to be that blatant about it, right? There are people who would do this. But so how you get the populace involved in cannibalism would be to, for example, you take fetuses, and there's some kind of chemical aspect of it they use for flavoring or whatever. Now, I'm not saying this actually happens. People have said this, but I haven't been able to show that it actually has. But it makes sense to me that if I wanted to get my goal as a debauched Satanist would be to get the unwitting public to ingest humans. Food additive is perfect. You can even, if it even comes out, like, remember Soylent Green? If it even comes out, you can say, well, it's for fetus. I mean, after all, there is a custom of people eating the placenta after birth, where you can actually cook it up and eat it. I didn't partake in that stuff, but even that, it's a one-time event. How many kids you have? They say you have 5. It's 5 times over your lifetime. But if you ingest humans over time, you have the old mad cow disease from eating cows. You got mad human disease, and I forgot the name of it. Kuru or something like that. There's a mad human disease from eating humans. Probably built into the system. You don't eat yourself. All throughout the, some of the predator world, they'll fight one another. But I don't know. I don't know if wolf eats. Well, I guess if they're hungry enough. But then again, it's going to be not a ritualistic thing that happens over and over again. So the goal would be to find a way to get human tissue into the food system. And then if there is a spiritual and or physical problem with that, you start to accumulate that and people become corrupted by it. They're not doing it consciously. The goal is, of course, consciously. The greatest thing that could happen would be to take let's say, a fundamental Christian who abhors abortion, have them have an abortion. That would be perfect, right? That's what evil wants. They want to take that person and do that. That's why you have temptations for people who are in some type of spirituality to get them to be unspiritual. That's an achievement. It starts a corruption within the individual. Now, Jesus talked when he was here. He talked about hypocrisy as being important. The only people he yelled at were those who were apocryphal. That's pretty little Freudian slip there. Who were hypocrites. I'll get it. So anyway, so to me, it's like this is what they would want to do. It makes sense that somebody would come up with this. And I mean, how common are fetuses aren't supposed to be used for parts. I mean, you could throw them in the garbage, I guess, and people could garbage pick, but you can't go around. Well, obviously you can do this now. They come up with stem cells. Well, we've harvested some stem cells in the past, and we're nurturing them to grow. So now we got human tissue, but it doesn't count anymore because, well, we stopped doing this, but we got these here to work with. So I mean, all of it's disgusting to me. And now they're trying to use stem cells to make animals more like humans so they can grow organs. That's the top excuse. Well, now we can grow organs and have the organs be more to save lives. That's the excuse on top. The bottom part is to make chimeras, which will eventually be, the ultimate slave and the ultimate perversion, if it even happened. I don't know if it can even possibly happen. Again, at some point, being a person who believes in God is going to go, okay, we're done. We're done with this stuff. Or perhaps people will stand up and will win back. Hezekiah will win back for a time, but it'll go down the toilet again eventually until it's done. Oh, you know what? I don't mean this as an insult to people who are outside of this country. So if you're listening, don't take it personal because I'm probably not talking about you. But I got people who post from other countries who are insulting President Trump, calling him names, telling him this and that, and they're being all nasty and what he should do and all that. And I got something to tell them. You're not here. You're not a citizen. I don't care what you think. You have no access. I don't want to come out and say anything about your country because I don't have, we could have a discussion. You might say this and that, but I'm talking about you're going to go, hey, you know what? Hey, Denmark, why do you got a queen? What's the matter with you? This is the 21st century. You still got royalty here? Hey, how about the Saudis? There's a king there who's a tyrant. I mean, you're killing, that's true, but I can't do nothing about it. And to have people come here and say, well, Trump, the yellow, orange, bad guy, and they come up with all these names, they just like to insult. There's a sickness inside there. And it happens in this country, too. But one thing I could say to people who live in another country, I don't care what you think. You want to have an honest discussion? Fine. You can come up with the orange man bad, you're done. I'm out of here. I don't care. A lot of these other countries, they don't have a freedom of speech. They don't have that at all. And you're going to come and you're going to use our freedom of speech to criticize the president and just call him names? No actual just criticism, just names? You're done. You're out of here. And somebody wrote to me and said, well, that sounds just like you, huh? You don't want to hear anything. It's just going to be, it's just your way. You're not going to hear of any. And I don't know. I've seen the name before. He's been a listener to the show. I don't answer those things. I just ban them. I don't want to deal with them. You want to have a talk with me? I'll talk to anybody about anything. You want to have a rational discussion? You want an honest discussion? You want to have a heartfelt discussion? I can talk about anything. I want to be able to talk about it. Certain things you can't talk about. You can't investigate like the Holocaust, or you can't investigate Sharpton, L. Sharpton, or something. You can't talk about these things because they have this barrier around it to stop whatever else they may be hiding underneath it. Even though there's facts, can't talk. I could talk about anything, but it's got to be an honest talk. Not somebody coming in who wants to get on a platform and start insulting. It's like, wrong guy. You have a freedom of speech. I have a freedom to not listen to your speech. I'm not to be compelled to listen to your speech, and I won't. Pretty good video here. I'll have to remember to put this up. This guy comes up with a very polite, very rational way of talking about term limits, which we should absolutely have, which we'll never have because nobody in Congress will vote for it. Imagine voting for yourself to not be working at your work anymore. They just won't do it. It has to be done by the people, and that's what they're talking about, having a constitutional convention. But then, of course, I get all worried because perfect can of worms to have that all corrupted, so I don't know. Yeah, I mentioned this about Roseanne Guy, who's on my Facebook. She is in South Africa, and she's been kind of being just a regular old person living there, talking about what's going on and how they're stealing the land from the white farmers, killing them, eating them, doing all this stuff, and it's pretty bad. And so I after watching her for a while, I think, you know what, people should follow her. She's just a regular person, and not a news outlet or a blog or not. She doesn't have any of that. She's just a regular person. And I put it up on there so people could follow her, and or she can, I don't mean to send a lot of knuckleheads over her way, but that's the problem when you're in the limelight, in the internet. You're open season for knuckleheads. I used to, my problems, I used to argue with them. I have this this feeling that you can have a rational discussion, and the evidence in the rational discussion will bring people to a point of agreement or disagreement. And what did I find out? It took me a long time. I find out that no, people don't want to come in here to have a discussion. A lot of times the last thing they want to do is have you say something that might have them change what they want to believe. Are you kidding me? They want to hear just what they want to hear. That's it. And if you look at a lot of popular media people, it's because they are cultivating an audience. Or calculating, I guess where I mix the words together, calculating what to say that his audience wants to hear and build this audience. So they're drawing in people of like minds and feeding them what they want to hear. And in return, they get ratings, which turns into money and advertisement and whatnot. And the problem, I don't care. I used to watch Perry Mason. Obviously, Perry Mason was not a real lawyer, but at least the principles taught in there were nice. But I don't expect, I didn't expect Raymond Burr to walk down the street and become a lawyer. I understand what fiction is. But when you're packaging it in truth, this is where I think there is a special spot in hell for the people who are lying propagandists. It's one thing to be the enemy, right? And it's one thing for politicians to be on the take. That's wrong. They're violating public trust. They got a special spot in hell for them too. But the worst offender, I think, is the persons whose job it was to be the watchdog so this stuff doesn't happen. And then I think this is where the propaganda media has a special spot in hell for them, because they are the people who are our watchdogs, and they've turned it into selling out propaganda-wise, and are now turning around training the people that are turning to them to get information, to get them to believe and follow things that aren't true. It's disgusting. Trying to look, there's anything else here. Of course, any Nico, that's kind of old now. I haven't done a show in 2 weeks, so. The U.S. They go to the court and they can reject people for not coming in. It's so clear in the Constitution. The president can go like, no, these people can't come in because I said so. Now, naturally, the president is expected to go what's best for the country, which Trump is doing. Like, I don't need to come up with some kind of elaborate. No, I just thought he shouldn't do it. And now we're legislating from the bench, so that's where you got these problems. Again, all these people who are doing these things need to be removed, but how do you do that legally without having it be some kind of a war? And this is what we're working on right now. There's a sign that I saw, I shared. God sent us someone to cure cancer, et cetera, et cetera. And then God says, I did, but you aborted them. And somebody else wrote down, or maybe they were killed by a U.S. drone strike. And I agree. To me, one of the reasons that they're doing war from the satanic perspective is killing the innocent. The dark side wants to kill the innocent. The light protects the innocent. The most vulnerable innocent are the ones that score the most evil points. So we have to accept that as a fact. And believe me, there's years and centuries of evidence to prove this, and act upon that idea. Because there's, when they asked, what was it, Margaret Thatcher, about all the kids that were killed in Afghanistan, and she said it's fine. I mean, I'd have to actually see the video. I did it one time, so I know what happened. I might not be quoting it purposely. No, it's not fine. Abortions do happen, and in some cases they would happen, and it's never fine. It's an evil of evils, and sometimes people have had them for whatever reason. It's never fine. Now it's okay. Now people are going like, I can't wait to have my first abortion. Those people are sickos. They're sickos or Satanists don't even realize it. Because it's always not good. Even when there was, let's call it a just reason, illness or whatever, cancer or whatever. I know of two people that had a medical condition that doctors recommended to them to have an abortion because of their medical condition. One was cancer. And the person, and I'm not giving names because I don't want to pull anybody out in the public, they said to him that you have cancer and we suggest that you abort your child and get treatment immediately. She said no. And she prayed it, left it up to God, and not only is her child was born fine, but then she was treated for cancer, and they were able to successfully treat her. Now, I know the answer isn't always the same for other people. There are people who do die. But it's my point is that you got to make a stand. You got to make a stand for life, for love. And saying, "Oh, I love you," and you can be 15 different genders. That's showing love. No, it's not showing love. Showing love is allowing people to do whatever they want, but caring about them in a sense where you're going to help them help themselves, I guess. Helping a child be born is about the best thing you can do, I guess. Epstein. Do I even need to go in Epstein? I mean, I don't know. Do I need to go into that? There's so many people out there doing it. Let me see if I can find. You see some of these comments I want to do. I'm not going to find these now. I don't want to sit and. Well, here. Let me give you an example. I just said a little bit about this earlier. There's a person who posted. Is this working out? I'm gonna have to switch to the other. There we go. And this comes from that Zeitgeist movie, right? Egyptian god worshipped, born of a virgin, 12 disciples, healed the sick and injured, resurrected from the dead, crucified, resurrection 3 days, known as the Lamb, the way, the light. Okay. Now let's just assume that's true. I'm not even assuming it's true, but let's just say though. My whole point and what I put down here was I focus on Jesus' teachings, his words, and I follow him. I pray to God for, in my life, for transformational energy to be the best I could be for God and following his principles. I don't concentrate on the packaging of him in the narrative. It's very possible that Jesus was repackaged to fit a common narrative so that it's easily transferable to other people. Now, does that mean He wasn't born of a virgin. I have no comment on that because it's irrelevant to me. See, this is why I said that I would be considered a heretic in churches. Jesus talked about, do as I say. Go do what I taught. Not go remember what's going to be written about me 100 years from now and the theological constructs around it. Do as he says. If you follow the Beatitudes and the Sermon on the Mount, and you follow Jesus' teachings and seek God to change you in your life to follow that mold, you will do well in a spiritual growth. All right. Looking at the chat room. Yeah, I'm Epson on. I'm looking. You're just talking. Before I go here, there's a big chat here thing. I should read this in case it. Okay, it's about the Earth. There's other ways to prove that the Earth is round. Yeah, I mean it is. It's one of these things that. Now, I want to say that there's a lot of things that are accepted as fact that are challenged, and people will just blow them off. Oh, come on, yeah. No, I actually looked into some of the stuff they said. Okay, let me see what the reasoning is, and I found all kinds of problems with it. And it's not because of belief problems; it's because of physics, the science physics of it. Excuse me. I had some other stuff I wanted to bring up here, and I think what I have to do is I'm going to have to line these up in a tab to make sure, because I can't, I don't want to waste your time me poking around here trying to find them. Because there was a bunch of stuff, not a bunch, a few things. All right, so I'll let this go. I guess the point I mentioned in the beginning is that right now, it is so unreal out there. Reality is being created to lure us away from reality. And what I have done, and I don't know how to say that phrase, I'm kind of retreating into the basics of reality. You know, I used to do it with the Art Bell in the early days of the show. We go out and talk about all kinds of different stuff. What if this? What if that? And it was interesting to kind of just say what if and what if that is. But what we've come up now is that the what ifs and what that are being used as a weapon against us. They're coming up with fiction. It's toxic fiction. It's like a drug. It's a toxic fiction to pull you out of reality and live in that fictional illusion or delusion. And when you live in a delusion, it's actually harmful to your consciousness, I'd say your body, your mind, and your soul, that whole. When you live a fictional, it's one thing to live in ignorance, which still is harmful, okay? But when you live in a conscious choiced fiction, I think it does more harm in the process. I'm just throwing it out there as a logical possibility. And I guess if I sat down and looked at cases of people, because when you're in a fictional delusion and you Dr. Rita Louise, who's been a long time, I haven't had her on a long time. I'll have to get her on. She had a book out and everything. I wanted to get her on. She wrote a book called The Coming Cosmic 2x4. Great title, great little book. It's a great, I want to call it a self-help book, but it's in the sense of getting your act together spiritually on the world. Very, very down-to-earth person, very educated, very nice lady. I talk with her many times. I call her a friend. One of the few people I've actually met a guest. I actually was down in Texas and visited with her for a day. But the book, The Coming Cosmic 2x4, is a great book, very simple book. And the principle of it is that if you're living in fiction, reality is a cold, hard, cruel brick wall. So if you are living in a fictional world and reality happens to come in, it will crush you. It could crush you. It could harm you. It could just harm you. It will win, is what I'm saying. Reality wins. Reality has no effort to be itself. Fiction takes effort. You'll notice that when people are believe in a fictional situation, they gotta constantly assure someone. You gotta keep the fiction alive. Get a convert into your fictional group. See, this guy saw the light, and he's a smart guy. So if he believes it, then it must be true. And you got to keep it rolling. You keep it doing it like that. This is the problem. And then when reality comes in, it's whack. And to use her analogy, getting knocked across the head with a 2x4 is quite startling. And this is what reality is. And what I see right now is we're all being set up in fictional realities. Whether you're a social justice warrior or whether you're the Q guy, we're being set up in fiction. And that the analogy would be getting hit by a 2x4 or whatever, or having the bottom drop out of your reality and you fall into the abyss of fiction, of what it is. This is what I see coming. This is why I'm saying it's so important to stay real, because, if whatever portion of what we think is going to happen happens, 100%, no percent, or some variant in there, that you're able to have sea legs, so to speak, to react to it. I guess that would be my closing remark, what the point was in the beginning, and why I wanted to do this talk today. Yeah, we're talking about the flat Earth in the chat room, and that's fine. That's fine. I'm not making. But that's the point of the flat Earth stuff, is to get people talking about it, or the Q stuff, or the plan, or even on the social justice side to have Trump is going to be impeached. You get all involved in that, and you miss them picking your pocket. You miss them setting it up for what their plan is. Epstein, his whole network, he may have been killed, possibly committed suicide, but they're going to cover it all up because it leads to the deepest and darkest, most evil secrets that humans have ever done throughout all of time. And the people who are doing it are all in positions of power, in front or behind it. And if that comes out, you will have a French Revolution that covers the entire planet. Because no matter if you're a liberal, conservative, Christian, or atheist, whatever color, whatever group you want to put down, nationality, it's universally accepted that kids are off on limits. And now they're trying to come out and say it's okay. That's how debauched it is. That's how close they are, they think, to revealing themselves. The goal that they want to do is have open, complete opposite to God a system. They want to have open debauchery, open affront to God, the principles of humanity. They want humans to eat humans, to disrespect humans, to conquer humans, to make fun of humans, because that's, of course, what the Satan being is behind it. Whether it's reptilians, whether it's a fallen angel, whatever Satan represents, an individual or group, it doesn't matter. See, I'm not into the dogma of it, but the spirit is real, and we're watching it unfold. The goal is to turn humans into a laughing stock of an absolute debauchery, going completely against the principles of the Creator. That's the poll. That's the bottom line. We're walking right into it. And they got to keep people distracted, whether they're watching The Bachelor, whether they're following Q, or just sitting back, relaxing, trusting in the plan, whether they're listening to Rules for Radicals and doing all. It's all part of this thing, and I'm going, man, I don't see how this could be fixed. I don't see. Best case scenario, like a Hezekiah type thing where you clean things off for a while and it'll collapse back again. Until psychopathy and evil is removed from the planet, from the DNA, from the structure, from possibility of happening, until that happens, we will always end up back in there, because evil is proactively evil. Good is allows. Good is that libertarian aspect of allowing people. And if you have the good turn into tyrannical, then you're having good people who are tyrannical. It's like, okay, it's okay. I'll take a good tyrant. As long as you're killing people who don't agree with you and doing things, that'll work for a while. But this is evil talking. Right, I'm going on and rambling on her. I'll be back next week. I'm trying to work out a way where I can just do quick little comments on topics that would think would be more functional than sitting here listening to me for an hour and a half. But I just don't see how I can do it. I mean, there's people who do updates from the phone in their car. I mean, I could try that. I don't know, but I don't know. So I don't know what I say. I think it's worth listening to. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it. But I don't think it's like, oh, I gotta get up and make a report. And I'm kind of like, we could get together and talk, or I guess I talk and you listen. We need, whenever you're convenient, we can do this. You can listen to it in replays and all that stuff. I mean, that's kind of how I look at it. I don't have this ego-based, I got to get this out because I gotta, it's like, it's probably why I'd never market anything because I just don't, I don't know, I just don't have the ego of myself or whatever, I don't know. But what I will say is, my time is limited. I'm in a situation with work and economics and all this stuff. I don't have a lot of time. I got no tolerance for BS. So, that's why when people start talking about things that don't matter, that I've already researched, and if they're not interested, they're just out, that I'm done. I'll move on. It's not that I don't want to hear what I don't want to hear. It's I don't have time to hear the BS. I've heard it I've been doing this for years. I've heard it over and over and over again. It's all the same formula. People who are, what happens? Have you heard me mention about that I have a Patreon page, or that you can donate? Have I said that? How many dozens and dozens of shows have I not said that? What is the first thing you hear when you tune into a YouTube? Talk about subscribing, talk about the Patreon, they talk about this stuff. Now, hey, believe me, I could use it, all right? But my point is, I'm not going to try and sell my goal of trying to be truth. I don't talk about it. And to me, when I go watch somebody and they tell me stuff that's valid, that's fine. But if they're going to spend half the time in stroking their own egos, I just can't. I can't deal with it. There's one guy, We Are Change, I guess it is, Lou Dabowski. He's got some good stuff in there. I can't handle watching him. I can't handle sitting through his self-aggrandizement to get to the meat. Now, I apologize that in my style, if I take a while to get the point across, I'm trying to explain things and blame it on my just an incompetence of being to the point and linear when it comes to this stuff, And I'll accept that. This show is an hour and a half, I think, or so. I could probably squeeze it into 40 minutes if I'd really, But I'm kind of looking at this. This is how I do this stuff, and I hope I can help. But I can't handle the ego-based people. They drive me crazy because they're using the talents and information they have to be a big shot, and I just can't handle that at all. I can't stand it. Sometimes I'll even not get the information because I just can't sit through it. Call me ADD or whatever. It wasn't invented back when I was a kid. Probably would have been called that now, but I just don't have the time for this stuff. I just, none of that. Especially when I get older, I got less time left. So, anyway, all right, I'm going to stop now. So, we'll see you next time. I entertain emails with suggestions, topics, and all this stuff. It's fine. I have started ignoring some of them because it's a person who should have their own show and tell this stuff, not try to have me do all this stuff for them. But I do look through stuff, and if something I think is valid, do it. So I welcome it. I really do. It's honestly, I do. And most of the guests that I've had throughout the years has been basically someone's brought my attention to somebody. I used to do a 4-hour show every week for year after year after year after year. Had guests for 2 hours, main guests, sometimes 2 1-hour guests. I had regular guests, less visible to the thing. Dr. Rita was one of them. They rotate off. I did all this stuff for a long time. And now I'm just tired. Because I was trying to get I was on a syndicated radio satellite trying to get the thing. That all fell apart, and I can't put that kind of effort into it at this point because I don't think it's... No one's going to want to in mass listen to me because I don't fit into the marketing molds. I don't tell people what they want to hear. I don't play okay, I'll play to this crowd. I'll go with the UFO crowd, and we'll do UFO stuff because I can get a certain amount of people. I'm not doing this for like a living. I want to do this in discovering of truth the best way I can and sharing the information. So that's the goal here. The proof's in the pudding. So, all right, I'm actually gonna go now. So sorry and we'll see you next time. God bless you. Oh, one thing. Lucinda asked me to mention this for prayers. There's two people we bumped into. My gosh, and I can't think of their names now. Butch is one of them. I can't think the other guy's name. He's a God knows, right? He's a motorcycle guy that comes out to this place we go to, and he's going for open heart surgery, right? God don't know who he is. And Butch just had open heart surgery. Brutal. Ripped open, like, brutal, right? He's doing okay, but he needs help. So we'd like you to pray for these people. And I don't know how this works. I don't know why you could pray for somebody and they get healed and other people you don't. I don't understand it. I just know that when you pray fervently, like you've done your part, and whatever happens, happens. And so I'm going to pray for these two individuals. I can't think of his name. Hold on that's right. I was going to say, that's Lucinda, but she's in bed with a migraine. I'm seeing in my head the motorcycle guy at Boondocks who's getting open heart surgery. I mean, God will know what that is, for crying out loud, right? So him and Butch, who's had open heart surgery, and I mean, we're talking about crisscross, neck to neck down. I'm like, whoa, you know. So please pray for these people, pray for their healing and their health, and that their spiritual growth, and that they will become closer to God at this time. Because, well, in both of them cases, they're not young, all right? So they're closer to God than than not in terms of meeting him anyway. So I said I would mention this. I almost forgot. Thank God for reminding me. Because that's probably God reminding me for people, because you're going to pray for him now and he's going to step in. Now, I don't know how that works, okay? We'll find out someday. But I know I've prayed for people and things have happened, and I've prayed for people and they haven't. And I just leave it up to God. And for some reason, sometimes when we step in and pray for somebody, the fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. When we do that, somehow, sometimes this works. Maybe God needs that little prayer thing. Maybe it's a blessing for us to be involved in it. I don't know how it works. I just do it. So please remember these two guys. The guy who with a motorcycle at Boondocks is going to get surgery, and the guy who is a neighbor who has had surgery. His name is Butch. Keep these in prayer for their healing and health. All right, here we go. Boom.
Thank you.